AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée use my house for their surprise wedding after they tried to secretly turn my backyard into the venue. I'm a 34-year-old single mom with a 9-year-old daughter. I bought my house 3 years ago after a lot of hard work, budgeting, and more than a little anxiety. It's not huge, but it has a big backyard with an old maple tree and a little deck that faces the sunset. It became my sanctuary and the place where my daughter and I plant tomatoes every summer. My younger brother, Ethan, is 28. He and his fiancée, Kara, have been engaged for about a year. They're both nice people, but they have what my mom calls big ideas with small follow-through. They love grand gestures, spontaneous plans, dramatic moments. But weirdly, they dislike logistics like budgets, schedules, or, asking anyone before making plans that involve them. Their wedding was originally supposed to be in late summer at a barn venue outside town. Nice place, rustic vibe, fairy lights. But apparently they ran into issues with payments and communication or something. I didn't pry. A few months ago, they told everyone they'd moved the wedding to a later date and were looking at different locations. 2 weeks ago, I noticed that someone had moved the patio furniture from the deck to the far corner of the yard. Then I noticed my string lights were taken down from the fence. I thought maybe my daughter and her friends had done something, but she swore she didn't touch anything. I put everything back. Next weekend, I came home from grocery run to find that my shed door was open and tools had been moved around. Not stolen, just moved. I was confused and told my neighbor, who casually said, "So your brother told me the wedding prep is finally happening. Huh? Hope the weather holds up." I just stared at him and asked what wedding prep he meant. He shrugged and said Ethan told him the wedding was going to be in my backyard and that they were doing some little setup things ahead of time. I thought he misunderstood, but when I called Ethan, he answered all cheerful and said, "Oh, great, you saw the lights?" We were thinking of putting the arch under the maple tree. I asked him what the hell he was talking about, and he said like it was the most normal thing in the world that they decided a small, intimate ceremony in my backyard would be perfect. He said they were going to surprise everyone by revealing the location the week before, including me, apparently. I told him no, just no, that my backyard was not a venue, and they needed to pick an actual place. He kept insisting it was no big deal and that I wouldn't have to do anything, except apparently allow 50 people into my property, have catered food on my lawn, deal with bathrooms, trash, and parking. But sure, no big deal. I told him again that the answer was no, and that they had absolutely crossed a boundary by doing things in my yard without permission. I could hear Kara in the background saying something like, "I knew she'd freak out. Just tell her we'll clean up, Ethan." He then switched tactics and said it was only because they were stressed and the original venue fell through, and my yard was sentimental to them because it reminded him of our childhood summer place. I said that nostalgia was not a reason to hijack my actual home. He hung up angry. My mom called 10 minutes later, asking me why I was ruining their special day. She said they were embarrassed about the venue falling through and wanted something simple, and I should be honored they picked my home. I asked her if she knew they had already been moving stuff around in my yard. She hesitated and admitted they had told her, but she thought I had agreed. I told her I absolutely had not. That night, Ethan sent a group message to the whole family saying the wedding was postponed indefinitely because some people didn't want to be part of their happiness, which was clearly aimed at me. Cue the flood of relatives calling me selfish, uptight, dramatic, controlling. One cousin even said, "It's just grass. Let them stand on it for one afternoon." But the part that really stung, my brother blocked me on social media, and my mom has been icy toward me since. My daughter heard me crying in the kitchen and got so worried, she asked if we needed to move again. A few days later, I got a message from Kara, long and emotional, saying she hoped someday I'd understand the pain I caused, because they had imagined this moment for months and thought I'd be happy to host such a beautiful memory. She said they didn't tell me because they wanted to surprise me with how magical it would look once set up. Then she added that everyone else said I was being controlling and territorial. I'll admit, I could be particular about my space, but I'm not crazy. This is my home. I pay the mortgage. I maintain the garden. I pay for repairs. It's the one place in my life that is fully mine. Still, the family drama has been massive, And part of me wonders if I should have been more flexible or if I should have offered a compromise like letting them do photos here, but not the ceremony. I didn't think no was unreasonable, but maybe I truly am the villain in their eyes. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée host their surprise wedding in my backyard after they started preparing it without my permission. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to apologize to my sister after exposing the truth about her wedding plans and making half the family bail on the event. My sister Maya and I have never been especially close, but we've always maintained something like functional sibling civility. She's 3 years older, always the golden child, always the one who knew how to work a room, flatter relatives, and present herself as the star of every family gathering. I was the quiet one, the reliable one, the one who helped, listened, and drove people to the airport at 5 a.m. because Maya was too tired. Maya announced her engagement last year in a dramatic, over-the-top way. A full rented-out rooftop restaurant, a photographer she'd hired herself, and a speech that sounded like she wrote it for an award show. I genuinely was happy for her, even if I found the theatrics exhausting. The trouble came when the wedding planning began. Anyone who has seen a wedding spiral out of control knows the symptoms. First came the relentless complaints about everyone else's responsibilities. Then the color-coded spreadsheets. Then the group chats, the subgroup chats, and the subgroup chats for the subgroup chats. Somewhere in the chaos, I was tasked with coordinating transportation for relatives flying in, monitoring hotel check-ins, supervising appetizers, and keeping track of a list called Mood Killers that apparently included music genres, people Maya didn't like, and certain brands of champagne. I didn't argue until things got weird. Maya started hinting that her fiancé's family was a bit stingy and that she didn't think they would contribute the same amount financially as our family. I told her it wasn't a competition. Weddings are expensive for everyone, and she shrugged it off. But weeks later, while I was helping her organize decorations, she left her laptop open and went to take a call. A spreadsheet caught my eye, labeled wedding revenue. At first, I thought it was a joke. Then I realized it wasn't. She was planning to charge guests for elements of the wedding and had categorized expected profits. She wasn't breaking even. She was expecting to make money. There were line items like signature cocktail access, $18 per person. Early cake slice access, $12. Couples photo experience, $35. A glittering horror of microtransactions. She had notes like upsell older relatives, they won't notice. And one that made me physically recoil. Charge dad extra if he brings his girlfriend. I closed the laptop immediately, but I couldn't unsee it. I confronted her after dinner. She didn't deny it. In fact, she got annoyed with me for being upset. She said something like, "Do you think Taylor and I are made of money? Weddings are an investment. Everyone pays for experiences these days. If people can spend hundreds on festivals, why not on my wedding? And if I can make some profit to start our life, what's the problem?" I told her it was manipulative and gross. She snapped that I was jealous of her. I told her I'd drop every obligation she'd piled onto me if she went through with this scheme. She told me I was being dramatic and that she'd already told vendors I'd handle certain things. That was when I realized she had never seen me as a helper, but as free labor. I didn't want to blow up everything, but I also wasn't going to support a wedding that treated guests like wallets. So I talked to my parents. Calmly, carefully, and I showed them the spreadsheet. Chaos. Actual chaos. My mom looked like she'd swallowed a brick. My dad muttered something about needing a drink. They confronted Maya. She cried, played victim, claimed I'd violated her privacy and misunderstood everything, then admitted some parts but insisted she wasn't actually going to charge dad extra. Word spread. Not by me. I swear on everything. I only told my parents. But they apparently vented to my aunt, who vented to my cousin, who told my uncle, and soon half the guest list knew. And half of them backed out. My sister blamed me completely. She screaming called me with this breathless fury, telling me I'd ruined the best day of her life, that I was vindictive, that I always wanted to tear her down because she shines brighter, and that I was dead to her if I didn't apologize to everyone for misrepresenting her wedding vision. She claimed all weddings charge for stuff anyway, that people expect to spend money, and that she was just being transparent about it. Except she wasn't. There were no notices, no obstinate purchases. She planned to spring the charges at the venue. The wedding still happened, but it was scaled down massively. Her fiancé's family was confused and uncomfortable, though they showed up anyway. Our side attended in smaller numbers, and it was awkward. Maya barely spoke to me. The groom looked like someone had explained tax fraud to him that morning, and he hadn't fully processed it. Now it's been 2 months. Maya refuses to talk to me unless I issue a formal, written apology and acknowledge I sabotage her wedding out of envy. My parents are split. My dad thinks Maya dug her own grave. My mom thinks I could apologize just a little to keep the peace. Friends say I didn't do anything wrong, but they weren't the ones being accused of destroying a wedding. So here I am. Maya says I'm a monster who ruined her big day. My mom says I should apologize for how I handled things, even if my intentions were good. My dad says I should change my number and let Maya cool off. And I don't know. Did I cross a line? Was exposing the spreadsheet going too far, even if the plan was unethical? Should I have stayed out of it and let her embarrass herself? AITA? AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée use my house for their family-only wedding after they excluded my wife and daughter from the guest list. My brother Mark and I grew up pretty close, at least until our 20s. He was always the golden child to my parents, while I was the one who moved out early, married young, and started a family first. Even then, I never felt like we were competing. I was proud of him when he got into his dream program, and he was the best man at my wedding. Things started shifting when he began dating his now fiancée, Claire. She's extremely image-focused and cares a lot about how things look online. She has a big Instagram following for her aspirational lifestyle, and ever since they got together, everything important in Mark's life has been filtered through what looks good in photos. For context, my wife Jenna is autistic and has always been open about it. She masks well, but big crowds and unpredictable social situations can be overwhelming. She's also quiet and has a dry sense of humor that some people misunderstand. Claire met her twice and decided she was awkward and not wedding aesthetic. Those were her actual words, told to Mark, who repeated them to me because, apparently, he thought I'd find it funny. I did not. Fast forward to 2 months ago. Mark and Claire got engaged and wanted a wedding that was intimate, rustic, and meaningful. Translation: a curated sponsor showcase. They asked if they could use my house because we have a big restored barn on 4 acres. It's the same barn my wife and I renovated together over 2 summers, doing all the sanding, sealing, and lighting ourselves. It's where we host movie nights, birthday parties, and the occasional neighborhood barbecue. It's personal, not just a venue. I told them I'd think about it. A week later, we were invited to what they called a pre-planning dinner. I assumed it was for everyone involved. When we arrived, there were place cards. Mine was there. Jenna's was not. Our 10-year-old daughter's wasn't either. I figured someone misplaced them, but no. Claire launched into a slideshow of her vision, and near the end, she said the wedding would be strictly family only. I raised my hand like an idiot in a meeting and said, "We are family." Claire gave me this tight smile and said, "Of course you are, which is why you're invited. But Jenna and Lily aren't blood relatives. It creates complications with the guest limit. We want cohesion." I genuinely thought it was a joke. I laughed. No one else did. When I asked why my wife of 12 years and my daughter were specifically excluded from a family-only event, Claire said she wanted the energy to be effortless and that my daughter might get restless in photos and my wife might not feel comfortable with the social expectations. I pointed out that neither my wife nor my daughter needed to be in stage photos. Claire then said, "I just don't want to compromise the atmosphere." Mark sat beside her, nodding like this all made perfect sense. I told them if my wife and child weren't welcome, then neither was I. Mark said I was overreacting and that this was about creating a vibe, not a personal attack. Claire added, "It's one day." They don't need to be involved. I told them they weren't just involved. They were my family. Then we left. A few days later, Mark texted me asking if I decided about the venue. I said no, because the wedding wasn't happening here unless my family was invited. He said I was holding the wedding hostage over something that shouldn't matter because Jenna doesn't even like big events. I told him she doesn't like being excluded more. And I certainly don't like people treating her like she's an inconvenience. This spiraled into a fight. My parents got involved, of course. My mom said I needed to keep the peace and that it's not personal, that Claire was just being particular. My dad said he understood my frustration, but that the barn would save them a lot of money, and I shouldn't punish Mark. Punish, right? What really set me off was when Claire messaged Jenna directly. She wrote a long paragraph saying she hoped there were no hard feelings and that she wanted the day to be comfortable for everyone, including Jenna, who might find the commotion overwhelming. It was condescending as hell, as though she were doing my wife a favor by excluding her. Jenna read it, shrugged, and said she was fine skipping the wedding, but she didn't want me to start a war over it. But she also admitted that it hurt her feelings more than she'd shown. And our daughter cried when she realized everyone was going except her and her mom. I told Mark again, no family, no venue. He said I was ruining his wedding. I told him he was doing that himself. Now the drama has become the main topic in our extended family group chat. My aunt says I'm right. My uncle says I'm dramatic. My parents have been calling daily to try to mediate. Mark has sent me multiple messages saying Claire is heartbroken, and I've embarrassed him. He also said they might have to choose a local event hall now, which would completely change the feel and set their budget back. He ended one message with, I hope you're happy with what you've done. I'm not happy. I am tired. Jenna says she'll support whatever I decide, even if that means letting them use the barn while she and her daughter stay home. But that feels like letting them treat my family like props they can remove for aesthetic reasons. I love my brother. I always have. But I don't know if I can support a wedding that actively excludes the two most important people in my life. So now I keep replaying everything and wondering if, in trying to stand up for my wife and daughter, I've gone too far and made it about pride instead of principle. AITA for refusing to let them use the house and barn. AITA for refusing to cancel my long-planned trip because my brother decided to schedule his wedding for the same week. For context, I'm 28 and my brother, Liam, is 31. Our relationship has always been fine on the surface, but if you dig an inch deeper, there's a long history of him assuming the world bends around his choices. Growing up, if I wanted to join a club or try something new, he'd suddenly want to do it too, and since he was older and louder, my parents often just sided with him. I never felt fully resentful, but I did learn that if I wanted something, I had to plan it meticulously and defend it like a thesis. So, last year, I started saving up for a 2-week trip to Japan. It's been my dream destination since I was a kid obsessed with trains, weird vending machines, and Studio Ghibli movies. I planned everything months in advance. Itineraries, hotels, even reservations for experiences that sell out at lightning speed. I spent a small fortune, but it was money I'd responsibly saved, not impulse bought. I told my family about the trip half a year ahead of time. Everyone said it sounded great. Even Liam just shrugged and said cool. No one hinted at any possible conflict. Fast forward to about 3 months before my departure. We're having dinner at my parents' house when Liam clears his throat dramatically and announces that he and his girlfriend, now fiancée, Marissa, are getting married. We're all excited and congratulating them until he casually adds the date, the second Saturday of my Japan trip. I froze mid-sip. I asked if he was serious, and he looked confused at my reaction. I reminded him of my trip dates. He blinked and said he forgot, but surely I could move the trip. Then he laughed as if the idea of me sticking to my plans was absurd, like not attending his wedding was something I'd never consider. I told him the trip was booked, paid for, and not something I could just reschedule without massive financial loss. Plus, I've been planning it for over a year. He shrugged and said family comes first. Marissa chimed in that weddings are once-in-a-lifetime events, but vacations happen all the time. My parents stayed quiet, which already gave me a sinking feeling. I didn't argue then. I just went home and stewed. The next day, my mom called me. sounding unusually nervous. She said she knew the situation was hard, but Liam was really hoping I'd reconsider because he wanted his whole family there. I reminded her that he picked the date knowing my plans, and she weakly replied that maybe he just forgot. She said I should think about the bigger picture and that my presence at the wedding was important for family unity. I asked her point blank if she thought it was fair that I lose thousands of dollars because he forgot something I'd repeatedly talked about. She hesitated, then said it wasn't about fairness, it was about priorities. It stung more than I expected. I told her I wasn't canceling. She sighed and said she hoped I'd change my mind. About a week later, Liam sent a family group text basically implying that I was being dramatic and selfish. He said that he and Marissa had chosen the date based on venue availability, and that if I really cared, I'd find a way to be there. I replied respectfully, but firmly, I wasn't budging. I wished them well, offered to help with anything before I left, and said we could celebrate when I got back. That's when things escalated. Marissa messaged me privately, saying she didn't want any bad blood, but that she felt hurt I didn't value their big day. She said it was disrespectful to prioritize tourism over a milestone in her life. I responded that it wasn't tourism. It was a dream I'd poured time, money, and heart into. I told her I wasn't choosing sites over people, but I also wasn't willing to be punished for their poor planning. Apparently, she didn't like that phrasing because she blocked me afterward. My dad finally spoke up one evening and told me I needed to apologize and fix things because it was unfair to stress out a bride like that. I asked if Liam had apologized to me for putting me in this situation. Dad got irritated and said I was too old to cling to childhood grievances. I wasn't even talking about childhood. I was talking about a trip I booked long before this wedding existed. The last straw was when Liam told me, during a call that turned into a shouting match, that I was embarrassing him. He said he'd have to tell his friends and extended family that his own sibling couldn't be bothered to show up. I said he could tell them the truth, that he knowingly chose a date I couldn't attend. He didn't like that either and hung up on me. Since then, my parents have taken turns guilt-tripping me. A few extended family members have reached out, guilt dripping from every syllable, telling me family is priceless and memories fade, but regrets don't. Meanwhile, the only people on my side are a couple of friends and one cousin who said she'd also have gone on the trip rather than cave to pressure. She called their scheduling decision inconsiderate at best and manipulative at worst. The thing is, I do feel bad. I don't want to hurt anyone, but I can't ignore the fact that they all knew about my trip and still chose a date that directly collided with it. I can't shake the suspicion that either they didn't take my plans seriously or they just assumed I'd fold because I always used to. The closer the wedding and my trip get, the more tense everything becomes. I've basically been cast as the selfish sibling who's abandoning the family. Even though I didn't change anything, they did. I'm still being pressured weekly to reconsider, and each time I repeat my stance, the disappointment thickens like fog. At this point, even if I wanted to cancel, the financial loss would destroy me. But even beyond that, I feel like giving in would mean that nothing has changed since childhood. That Liam can bulldoze through my life with expectations, and I'm supposed to smile and adapt. So now I'm stuck wondering if I'm being stubborn or if everyone else is being unreasonable. The guilt is eating at me, but so is the resentment. AITA? AITA for refusing to apologize to my sister after revealing the truth about her mystery fiancé during our family dinner. My family is the kind of family that thrives on theatrics. We are loud, opinionated, meddling, and allergic to minding our own business. Unfortunately, my older sister, Lila, is the queen of theatrics. She has always been the one who needs to be the center of attention, especially in front of our parents. I'm the middle child, constantly overlooked unless someone needs tech help or a dog sitter. For years, Lila has strutted through life, collecting admirers like magnets pick up metal shavings. The problem is that she can't seem to stay single for more than 20 minutes. When she doesn't have a boyfriend, she invents romantic drama and spins it like she's auditioning for a soap opera. The rest of us just nod along and hope dinner ends before she launches into monologues. Recently, she started talking about a new guy named Ethan. According to her, he was tall, brilliant, outdoorsy, a self-made entrepreneur, a philanthropist, and apparently had dimples so deep you could store spare change in them. She hadn't introduced him to any of us, supposedly because he was so private and not ready to meet the family. She spoke about him constantly, though. Every phone call, Ethan. Every group chat message, Ethan. Every post on social media. Ethan's shadow, Ethan's blurry elbow, Ethan's car, which always seemed suspiciously like a stock photo. At first, we teased her about having an imaginary boyfriend again. She got defensive and doubled down, insisting she was planning to get engaged sooner than we think. This went on for months. My mom was already looking at wedding venues online. My dad kept joking about grilling the guy, but also worrying whether he had a stable job. I just rolled my eyes and figured Lila was exaggerating like usual. Then last week, she announced we were having a big family dinner at my parents' house because Ethan was finally ready to meet all of us. She told us to dress nicely because he had a very refined aesthetic. My mom practically polished the silver. My dad put on a tie. It was a whole thing. So dinner rolls around. We're all sitting there. Food is hot. Drinks are poured. Lila is glowing and making a huge show of checking her phone every 30 seconds. Then she blurts out, "Okay, everyone, don't be shocked, but we're engaged." She lifts her hand and shows off a ring that looks suspiciously like something from Amazon's bridal sets under $30 list. My parents gasp. My brother pats her on the back, awkwardly. I stare because something feels off. We ask where Ethan is, and she says he's on his way. An hour passes, then another. My dad's tie is half undone. My mom keeps peeking out the window. Lila keeps making excuses about traffic, car trouble, a delayed work call, the phases of the moon, whatever. Now, here's where things snowball. I work in marketing, specifically digital advertising. I deal with social profiles all the time. For months, I'd suspected something. So earlier that day, I secretly reverse image searched one of Lila's Ethan pictures. It took me about 3 minutes to find the exact same guy on a stock image site. Turns out Ethan was a model used for ads about travel insurance and beard oil. I wasn't going to say anything. Truly, I planned to let her handle her embarrassment privately. But after 2 hours of waiting and listening to her spin lie after lie at a decibel level that could shatter glass, something in me snapped. When she announced that Ethan's car had exploded on the highway, but he was fine and heroically helping other drivers, I couldn't take it anymore. I said, "Lila, can we please stop pretending? Ethan isn't real." The whole table went silent like someone pressed mute on life. My mom demanded to know what I was talking about. I explained as gently as I could that the pictures were stock images, that her stories kept changing, that there was no record of him anywhere, and that she kept creating drama anytime someone asked to meet him. Lila started shaking her head frantically, saying I was jealous and a liar. I pulled up the stock photo on my phone and showed everyone. The resemblance was unmistakable. My dad leaned back like he'd been punched. My mom looked like she was about to faint. My brother excused himself to the porch. Meanwhile, Lila burst into tears and ran upstairs to my old bedroom. My parents were furious with me. They said I had humiliated her, ruined their evening, and crossed a line. I told them I wasn't the one who invented a fake fiancé and dragged everyone into a fantasy. They insisted I should have waited and talked to her privately. Lila refused to come downstairs and refused to speak to anyone. Eventually, I left because the tension was unbearable. Later that night, she posted a cryptic story online about being betrayed by the one person she thought she could trust. The next morning, I got messages from cousins asking why I exposed her. Since then, my parents have been pressuring me to apologize to keep the peace. They keep repeating that even if she lied, it was her personal business and shouldn't have been revealed in front of everyone. Meanwhile, Lila still claims Ethan is real and currently in the hospital after the explosion. I don't think I was wrong for telling the truth, especially when she was stringing everyone along and literally announcing a fake engagement. But now I'm the villain in the family group chat. So, AITA for calling her out? AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée include a completely fabricated version of me in her wedding speech and causing a family meltdown? I'm 32 and have always had a pretty calm, boring relationship with my family. No big dramas, no long-standing grudges. My younger brother, Kyle, is 28 and getting married in December. His fiancée, Jenna, is nice enough on the surface, but she has a weird obsession with crafting these polished public narratives about her life. Her social media is basically a self-written documentary, complete with heartfelt captions, dramatic arcs, and moral lessons. Nothing wrong with that on its own, but she often exaggerates real events or rewrites them entirely. The problem started when she asked me to review a draft of her wedding speech because she said she wanted to make sure I was comfortable with how she referenced me. I thought it was sweet and agreed. Big mistake. Her speech included this whole emotional anecdote about how I used to bully her when she and my brother first started dating, how I constantly made her feel unwelcome because I supposedly said she wasn't good enough for him, how I pressured Kyle to dump her, and how she won me over with her sincerity. According to her speech, I eventually apologized in tears for misjudging her and embraced her like a sister. None of this happened. I literally met her for the first time at a barbecue and said, "Hi, nice to meet you." That was the extent of my alleged campaign of torment. I've never even argued with her. So I told her straight up, this story isn't true. She gave me this overly gentle smile and said, "I know your memory of it is different, but this narrative really ties the speech together. It's meant to show how love brings people together." I said, "But it didn't happen." She said, "But it feels true to the arc of where we are now." I repeated, "But it didn't happen." She then got frustrated and said I was being rigid and missing the point. She said the speech needed emotional contrast, and having me, as the doubter turned supporter, gave the audience a powerful moment of transformation. She said it painted me as someone who grew, which she thought was flattering. I refused. I told her she could make whatever narrative she wanted about herself, but she didn't get to invent actions for me. She said I was being uncooperative and ruining something important to her. Later that night, Kyle called me. He sounded exhausted. He said Jenna was upset and crying because I'd harshly rejected her creative expression and embarrassed her. I asked him if he honestly believed I'd ever done any of the things in that speech. He hesitated and then said, "Well, maybe not exactly like that, but maybe you came off distant at first and she interpreted it that way." I told him distant isn't bullying, and I wasn't distant either. I was polite and normal. I've always been in his corner. I told him his fiancée rewriting our relationship was weird and disrespectful. He said, "Can't you just let her have this? It means a lot to her." I said no, because she wasn't just telling her story, she was telling mine. And it was a lie. The next day, my parents called me to say Jenna was devastated. Apparently, she told the family that I condemned her speech because I refused to acknowledge how much she'd grown on me. My mom asked me, "Did you maybe unintentionally make her feel unwelcome back then?" People remember emotions more than facts. I said, "Mom, she wrote a fictional scene where I sob on her shoulder. That's not an emotion. That's a lie." My dad, who usually avoids drama, said, "Do you think maybe you're being too literal? This is a symbolic speech." I asked them how they'd feel if someone delivered a public speech telling a story where they emotionally abuse someone and then learn a lesson and everyone applauded their personal growth. They both went quiet. Over the next week, things got even messier. Jenna tried to compromise by rewriting the story to make the bullying less harsh, but she still insisted on including a version where I doubted her. We clashed, and she eventually earned my respect. She also added an exaggerated scene where I supposedly gave her a meaningful hug after a particularly emotional moment last year. That never happened either. I'm not anti-hug, but I certainly didn't participate in any dramatic embrace that symbolized forgiveness. I told her I still wasn't okay with it. She accused me of punishing her creativity because I don't understand narrative storytelling. I told her this isn't a movie, it's a wedding. She accused me of making everything about myself. Now my entire family is pressuring me to drop it. My aunt told me, "Nobody will fact-check a speech." My cousin said, "She's basically giving you a compliment. She's calling you a redeemed character." My mom keeps saying, "Pick your battles." My dad suggested I take the high road and let it go. But I don't want to sit there on their wedding day while she tells a room full of people that I was once cruel to her, and she graciously helped me grow. It's humiliating and untrue. It feels like she's using me as a prop. I told Kyle and Jenna that if she insisted on telling a fictional story about me, I wouldn't attend the wedding at all. Not as a threat, but as a boundary. I said I wouldn't sit there silently while she lied about me in front of everyone. Jenna told me I was being vindictive and selfish and ruining the happiest day of her life. Kyle said I was forcing him to choose between me and his future wife. My parents are begging me to reconsider because my absence will cause a family rift. I said all of this could be avoided if she would simply not lie about me. She refuses. So now everyone is furious at me. Half the family thinks I'm overreacting. The other half thinks Jenna is being dramatic, but that I should just play along. My brother is barely talking to me. And I'm sitting here wondering if I've lost my mind because I genuinely feel like the only sane one in the room. AITA? AITA for refusing to let my brother-in-law keep a temporary emotional support rooster in our guest room and accidentally triggering a family-wide meltdown that ended with me being called a controlling tyrant. My wife and I bought our house 3 years ago with the intention of eventually letting her younger brother, Ben, stay with us while he got back on his feet. He's had a rough time, dropped out of college twice, bounced between jobs, and has a tendency to latch onto questionable hobbies with the intensity of a religious awakening. We agreed that if he needed help, he could stay in our guest room for up to 6 months, provided he followed the house rules, looked for a job, and contributed in some small way. About 2 months ago, he showed up after losing yet another job. We let him settle in. For the first 3 weeks, he did okay. He applied for jobs, cleaned up after himself, and actually cooked dinner twice a week. Then he discovered a local farm's adopt-a-rescue animal program. Within 48 hours, he had signed himself up as a volunteer, which we thought was good. Productive. Outdoors. Social. Fine. What we didn't realize was that he had become emotionally entangled with a rooster named Captain Clucksworth. Captain Clucksworth is enormous. The size of a small dog. Mean, too. One of those roosters that looks at you sideways like he's plotting tax fraud. Ben became obsessed. He talked about the rooster constantly, showing us photos every night, describing Captain's personality traits in disturbingly romantic detail. I figured it was a passing phase, like the time he decided bonsai trees were his destiny and ordered $500 worth of miniature tools. Then one afternoon, I came home from work and heard screeching coming from the guest room. My dog was losing his mind. I opened the door and, to my absolute horror, found a giant rooster perched on the guest bed frame like some kind of feathery gargoyle. The room smelled like hot barnyard. There were feathers everywhere. Ben was sitting cross-legged on the floor, calmly brushing the rooster like this was an everyday spa treatment. I shouted, "Why is there a chicken in the house?" He calmly corrected me. It was not a chicken, it was Captain Clucksworth, and he had been temporarily fostered because the farm needed space. He said, "It's only for a few weeks. He's my emotional support animal. I already filed the online paperwork." I swear he said online paperwork, with the confidence of someone who believes that the internet is a legitimate legal system. I told him absolutely not. First, our HOA has rules about livestock. Second, our dog was terrified. Third, this giant bird was aggressively testing the structural integrity of my furniture. Fourth, the smell. Ben argued that Captain Clucksworth helped his anxiety and that removing him would be emotionally destabilizing. My wife, who usually sees through his nonsense, hesitated. She said he had been happier lately, and maybe we could compromise for a week. I was firm. No farm animals in the house. Apparently, that made me the villain. Ben called me controlling. My wife got defensive on his behalf. Then her parents entered the group chat, demanding to know why I was ragefully banning a therapy animal. My mother-in-law claimed roosters are cleaner than dogs, false, and more intelligent, also false. Captain kept pecking the mirror for 20 straight minutes like he was trying to duel the ghost of himself. Despite my refusal, Ben kept the rooster in the room that night. At 4:12 a.m., Captain Clucksworth unleashed a crow so loud it shook my ancestors. My dog panicked, jumped off the bed, and knocked over a lamp. My wife screamed. I barged into the guest room, flipped on the light, and found the rooster standing triumphantly on top of my pillow, which he had stolen from the hallway somehow. That was it. I told Ben the rooster had to go back immediately. He refused. My wife begged me to calm down, But I had reached the end. I physically carried the rooster outside. He screamed the entire time, loaded him in a Ben's car, and told Ben to drive him back to the farm. Ben left in tears. My wife said I humiliated her brother and acted like a dictator. Her parents said I emotionally abused Ben by not validating his connection with the rooster. Now half the family is furious with me. The other half is apparently impressed that I manhandled a rooster without bleeding. Ben is now staying with his parents, who live in an apartment where roosters are very much not allowed, which means Captain Clucksworth is back at the farm. But everyone is treating me like I committed some moral atrocity. My wife hasn't fully forgiven me. She thinks I should have talked it out instead of putting the rooster in the car. I think I handled a farm animal hostage situation with heroic restraint. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother-in-law keep an emotional support rooster in our guest room, and for personally escorting the bird off the premises at dawn. AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée use my house for their family unity wedding even though it caused a huge rift in my family. I, 34 bought the house I live in about 6 years ago. It is a modest but very pretty 2-story place with a large backyard that used to be part of an old farm. I spent a lot of money and even more time fixing it up with my own hands. My parents helped with small things like painting a bedroom or gardening, but the down payment, mortgage, repairs, and every renovation were from my pocket. My younger brother, Luke, 29 has always had a complicated relationship with responsibility. He jumps from job to job, gets big ideas but rarely follows through, and my parents have always swooped in to protect him from consequences. I love him, but sometimes it feels like we grew up in completely different households. Luke got engaged last year to his fiancée, Danny, 27F. Danny is very outgoing and very into aesthetic social media content. She runs a small event planning Instagram page and has dreams of building it into a full career. I like her well enough at first, but she has a habit of assuming that everyone around her should help make her ideas happen. About 4 months ago, Luke and Danny came over and announced that they had a brilliant idea. They wanted to have their wedding in my backyard. Not just a simple ceremony, but a full rustic chic wedding with string lights, florals, a wooden arch, a dance area, a cocktail station, and an outdoor dinner setting. They even showed me a Pinterest board. I asked what their budget was, and Danny shrugged and said, "That's the best part. We can keep costs low because we already have the perfect venue right here," by which she meant my home. For free. I told them I needed time to think about it. The idea of 80 to 100 people traipsing through my house and yard made me nervous. I work from home, I have expensive equipment, and my backyard landscaping is pretty delicate. But my parents were excited, saying it would be a beautiful family event and a great way to support Luke. When I told Luke and Danny I wasn't comfortable with hosting, things escalated shockingly fast. Danny looked deeply offended and asked why I didn't want to be part of their wedding. Luke jumped in and said it wasn't like they were asking for money, just space. I reminded them that hosting a wedding isn't trivial. Liability, noise, damage, cleanup, parking, all the logistical stress would be on me. Danny said, "You're being dramatic. It's one day. People do this all the time." But one day for them would be weeks of prep and cleanup for me. Plus, none of this was discussed like a request. It was presented like something already decided. My parents began pressuring me too. My mom said she had already told a bunch of relatives that the wedding would be at my house because she was excited. I reminded her I never agreed to that. She waved it off, saying I'd change my mind once I realized how special this would be. Then 2 weeks later, I came home from a weekend trip to find Luke and Danny in my backyard. They had let themselves in with the spare key my parents have for emergencies. They were measuring the yard. Danny was walking around saying things like, "The arch will be perfect here, and we'll have the tables on this side, but we might need to pull out that bush." I was furious. I told them both to leave immediately, and I took the spare key back from my parents the same day. That's when the real conflict began. Danny called me selfish. Luke said I had humiliated them. My mom said I overreacted. My dad tried to mediate, but gently hinted that maybe I should just do it because family is important. A week later, Danny posted a series of passive-aggressive stories online, saying some people don't understand loyalty and family should support dreams, not crush them. People who knew us figured it out quickly. I started getting messages from relatives asking why I was ruining Luke's wedding. Eventually, I put my foot down. Not only was I not hosting the wedding, but Luke and Danny were not allowed to enter my home without my explicit permission. The situation boiled over when Luke called me screaming that I had betrayed him. He said Danny's parents offered their yard, but it wasn't as picturesque, and now Danny felt like her dream wedding was ruined. He told me that I cared more about my lawn than about his happiness. I responded that I cared about boundaries, something he never learned because our parents never enforced them. He hung up on me and hasn't spoken to me since except through a few cold texts. My parents keep urging me to apologize for how harsh I was and just let it go, even though the wedding has already been moved to a local lodge. Danny still won't speak to me, and I wasn't invited to the tasting or planning events. I'm not even sure I'll be welcomed at the wedding. Part of me feels guilty because this has genuinely hurt Luke. Another part of me feels like this entire mess started because they assumed they could take advantage of me and reacted badly when I said no. I have always been the responsible one, and maybe they expected I'd just cave like usual. Now the family is split. My cousins think I was right. My parents think I ruined something meaningful. Luke thinks I'm jealous or controlling. Danny thinks I hate her. All I wanted was some respect for my home and my autonomy. AITA? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my sister and her fiancé host their dream engagement weekend at my lake house after they treated me like their personal event planner. I'm a 34-year-old guy who got incredibly lucky and inherited a modest but beautiful lake house from my grandparents. It's not a mansion or a luxury retreat, but it's a peaceful place with an amazing view, a big deck, a dock, kayaks, and enough space to sleep 8 comfortably. I use it as my escape from work and city life. It's my safe place, and I take a lot of pride in maintaining it. My sister, 29, got engaged earlier this year to her fiancé, who I'll call Trent. My sister and I get along okay most of the time, but she can be intense when she wants something. The kind of person who asks for a small favor that somehow turns into a 12-step project requiring hours of your life. About 2 months ago, she called me asking if they could have their engagement weekend at the lake house. Just a small gathering of close friends. I said I'd think about it and asked for details. She said maybe 10 to 12 people, nothing wild. I said it might be fine, but I need to be there to keep things in order because I don't rent it out and I'm protective of the place. Well, that apparently didn't fit into her vision. She said she wanted it to feel like a getaway, not like her older brother hovering. I said I wasn't comfortable letting a group of adults I barely know party at my property unsupervised. She got annoyed but said she understood and would adjust the plan. Fast forward 2 weeks. I get an email, an actual multi-page PDF. It looked professionally formatted and included a schedule, theme ideas, color palettes, a list of furniture she wanted moved, a map labeling where the photo zone should be, and even what she called the optimal drone launch area. She also included a list of materials the venue should provide, which included things like string lights, blankets for a sunset picnic, firewood, a projector, extra decor, and a specific brand of cocktail mixers that she claimed fit the vibe. I immediately called her and said, "What is this?" She said it was her engagement weekend planning document, and she needed me to confirm that the venue could provide these things. I said, "You understand the venue is literally my house, right?" She said yes, but since it's perfect for events, I should take hosting responsibilities seriously. I told her she was being unreasonable and that I wasn't her staff. She got offended and said she was just trying to keep things organized. But that wasn't the end. A few days later, I get a group text from her addressed to me, Trent, and about 10 people I don't know. She wrote something like, "Hey everyone, can't wait for the engagement weekend at Lake Serenity. It's going to be magical. My brother is handling logistics, so let him know if you have allergies, dietary restrictions, or activity preferences. He's also coordinating bedroom assignments, so reach out if you have sleeping needs." She volunteered me as the coordinator for a party I had not even agreed to host. I told her to remove me from the group chat immediately. She texted me privately saying I'd embarrassed her. I said she'd misrepresented the whole thing. She insisted I hadn't actually said no yet and that she assumed we were moving forward. I finally put my foot down. I told her I wasn't hosting anything at the lake house, period. Cue meltdown. She said I was sabotaging her engagement, that her friends already had their hearts set on this setting that was the only aesthetic that matched the vibe she wanted, and that she couldn't afford to rent a comparable place. She told me I was being petty and controlling and that normal siblings help each other with big life milestones. Trent called me the next day and tried to mediate. He was calm, but clearly thought I should cave. He said it would mean a lot to my sister and that it was just one weekend. I said I wasn't comfortable hosting a dozen strangers at my personal retreat while being expected to play concierge, decorator, and property manager. He said, fine, I didn't have to do any of that. They would handle everything. I reminded him that wasn't what my sister wanted. He didn't respond. Then my mom called. She said she understood my concerns, but maybe I should compromise for family. I asked what compromise looked like. She suggested I stay nearby in a motel so my sister could use the house, but I could check in if needed. I nearly laughed. She said I wasn't being fair. I told her I wasn't leaving my own house to let a group of excited 20-somethings redecorate, rearrange furniture, and bring drones. She said I was making it sound worse than it was. The next day, my sister posted a vague message online about family betraying you when you need them most. People commented with sympathy. Without naming me, she said she was heartbroken that her engagement weekend was ruined by selfishness. Now, some relatives are texting me asking why I can't just let her have the house for one weekend. I told them the house wasn't the problem. It was the expectations and the way she treated me like hired help. A few understood, but most think I'm being cold. What really made me feel firm in my decision was that last week I visited the lake house to winterize some things. I found a sticky note on the fridge that said, "Champagne fridge," in my sister's handwriting. On the counter was a tape measure. She had apparently come by without telling me, snooped around, and started measuring spaces. When I asked her about it, she claimed she just needed to check dimensions, but insisted nothing was final since I hadn't confirmed yet. I told her entering without permission was not okay. She said, dramatically, "You don't even want to help me have my special moment." At that point, I told her I was changing the locks and that the answer was absolutely no. She said I was being vindictive. I said she had violated boundaries again and again. So now my sister isn't speaking to me. Trent sent me passive-aggressive texts like, "Wish we could have celebrated together, and I hope you reconsider." My mom thinks I escalated things by changing the locks. My aunt called to tell me love is about sacrifice. And apparently my sister is now trying to book a different lake house last minute and is furious that everything is expensive or unavailable. Some friends say I did the right thing. Others say it wouldn't have killed me to let her have the weekend. But I feel like I was being used. Like I was a prop in her aesthetic event rather than a brother. So AITA? AITA for refusing to let my sister move into my house after she blew up her own life and tried to pin the fallout on me? I never thought I'd be the villain of a family saga. But according to my sister, a chunk of our extended relatives, and 3 angry Facebook posts tagging me by name, I've destroyed her life. I'm a 35-year-old guy with a stable job in IT, a modest house in a quiet suburban area, and a long history of being the one who smooths things over in my family. My sister, 29, whom I'll call Lila, has always been the opposite. Charismatic, spontaneous, great at making friends, terrible at keeping jobs, and somehow cursed to experience every dramatic twist life can conjure. The current drama started 6 months ago when Lila quit her job at a catering company because her manager asked her to stop taking home leftover food without permission. She called me sobbing about how they were treating her like a criminal. I told her gently that maybe taking several trays of cupcakes counted as more than leftovers and that she should at least try to talk it out. She hung up on me. A week later, she was fired for screaming at the manager in front of customers. She bounced around a few gigs after that, never staying more than a few weeks. Then, 3 months ago, she moved in with a new boyfriend, her 4th of the year, a guy named Harrison who she swore was her soulmate. 2 weeks in, she called me again, crying so hard I could barely understand her. After calming her down, She admitted she'd gone through his phone, found texts with another woman, confronted him, and he kicked her out. I asked why she was snooping, and she immediately snapped that I was victim-blaming. She blocked me for 2 days, unblocked me, and asked if she could come stay with me for a few nights. I let her. Those few nights turned into 2 weeks. She didn't clean anything. She smoked on my porch and flicked ashes into my potted plants, and she borrowed my car twice without asking. The final straw was when she threw a party while I was at work, telling me afterward that she needed it for her mental health. I told her she had to leave by the weekend. She cried again, said I was abandoning her, packed her things dramatically, and slammed the door behind her. I felt guilty for about a day, but then I found that 2 of my kitchen knives were missing. She later claimed she had accidentally packed them. Another month passed. Lila lived with a friend, got into some argument I still don't understand, got kicked out again, and was briefly couch surfing. During this time, she posted dramatic messages online about betrayal, snakes, and how people only love you when they need something. 2 weeks ago, she showed up at my front door without warning. She looked exhausted, eyes swollen from crying. She said she had nowhere else to go and that she needed to live with me for a few months, maybe 6, but no longer than a year. I told her firmly that I couldn't do that, and that the last time had been very hard on me. She immediately became defensive and said she'd been going through a rough patch and that I should have more compassion as her brother. I reminded her about the unauthorized party, the car, the knives, the mess. She waved her hand and said I was stuck in the past over minor things. Then she said something that made me freeze. You owe me this. If you hadn't lectured me about the catering job, I wouldn't have snapped at my manager and gotten fired. That whole spiral started with you. It was such a bizarre accusation that for a moment I didn't even have a response. She genuinely believed this chain reaction traced back to me, telling her not to yell at her boss. I told her she couldn't live here. She begged me, then tried guilt-tripping me, then said she'd start paying rent in 3 months, then accused me of abandoning her again. When none of that worked, she stormed off my porch and told me I would regret this. Later that day, the Facebook post began. She wrote long paragraphs about how her own brother turned her away and how he helped ruin her life, then refused to help fix it. She didn't mention any specifics, but several relatives reached out asking why I was letting her be homeless. I explained my side to the ones who would listen. Some were sympathetic, but others said things like, "She's family. You can put up with it for a little while." Then my aunt called and said Lila told her that if she ends up on the streets, it's my fault. That made me furious. I decided to put everything in writing. I sent Lila a long message explaining why I couldn't let her move in, how much stress the last time caused me, and that I would help her look for shelters, job programs, or low-cost rentals, but she could not live with me. She responded with a single message. I hope you can live with yourself. She hasn't spoken to me since except to post cryptic quotes like, the people closest to you are the ones who twist the knife deepest. My mom asked me yesterday if I could at least consider letting her stay, just until she gets back on her feet, but I know that could mean months or years. Lila's pattern has been the same since we were teenagers. She creates chaos, begs for rescue, hurts the people who help her, then blames them when things fall apart. But the guilt is still there. Even though I know logically that I didn't cause her job loss, or her breakup, or her fights with her friends, part of me feels awful imagining her bouncing around from couch to couch. And I wonder if I'm being too harsh by refusing her when I do have a spare room. On the other hand, I've worked hard for the stability I have, and every time she enters my space, chaos follows. Still, she's my sister, and the guilt, plus the family pressure, is making me second-guess myself. So here I am, throwing this out to strangers. AITA for refusing to let my sister move into my house after she blew up her own life and is trying to blame me? AITA for refusing to let my sister move into the home I inherited from our parents and making her actually pay rent like a normal adult? A few years ago, both of our parents passed away within a short time of each other. It was devastating, and my sister Lena and I handled grief very differently. I was the one who dealt with the logistics, sorting the estate, dealing with lawyers, managing the house, planning the funerals, and organizing everything that comes with losing 2 people you love at once. Lena was emotional and withdrawn, which I understood, but she also left every single responsibility to me because she said dealing with paperwork made her panic. Our parents will stated that the house would go entirely to me. This is something our parents had discussed with both of us years ago. They did it because Lena admittedly has always been financially irresponsible and unstable, and they trusted me to maintain the property and help her if truly needed. Bill did leave some funds to Lena directly, which she received. For context, I'm 33 and Lena is 28. Lena has always bounced between jobs, rarely paying her bills on time, constantly needing bailouts, and expecting others to fix things for her. Our late mom used to call her a gentle hurricane, meaning she would blow in, cause chaos, and blow out again. Lena would laugh about it and wear it like a personality trait. Fast forward to this year. I spent the last few years renovating the house bit by bit. I worked extra shifts, learned DIY skills, and poured a lot of sweat into turning the old family home into a place I could actually live in long term. I stripped old wallpaper, fixed broken railings, redid the kitchen, refinished the floors, and even landscaped the yard. I treated it as honoring our parents by taking care of what they built. Lena lived with various roommates during these years. She burned through the money she inherited on what she called experiences, festivals, spontaneous trips, and buying gifts for boyfriends who rarely lasted more than a few months. She never saved. She kept saying she would get her life on track soon. 3 months ago, one of her roommates moved out suddenly, and the landlord refused to renew the lease for just her and the remaining roommate because they'd been late on rent too many times. That's when Lena called me. She said she needed to move into the house immediately because she had nowhere to go. I told her she could stay for a few weeks while she got settled and found a new place, but that I wasn't planning on having roommates. She said she understood, except once she moved in, she acted like it was permanent. She brought tons of boxes, furniture, random decor, and insisted on putting her stuff in the living room, the kitchen, the hallway closets. She would blast music at midnight, come home drunk, leave dishes everywhere, and generally treat the house like a college dorm. I reminded her several times that this arrangement was temporary and that she needed to look for a new place soon. She always said she was working on it, but whenever I asked for specifics, she had none. Then last month, I told her I needed an actual move-out date. She suddenly reacted with shock and said she assumed she would live there indefinitely because it was our childhood home, and her half of the memories meant just as much as mine. I told her that Will left me the house explicitly and that she knew that. She burst into tears and said I was rubbing in her face that our parents trusted me more. I told her she had other options, including the fact that she could rent a place like everyone else and that she needed to take adult responsibility for her life. She said she couldn't afford rent because she just quit her job to pursue something she called her passion project. I asked what that meant. She said she wanted to become a travel influencer. She currently has 312 followers on her account and posts pictures from trips funded by her inheritance money, which is now gone. When I told her she could stay only if she paid rent, her face twisted like I'd slapped her. She said it was cruel to make family pay rent and that our parents would be ashamed of me. I reminded her that our parents asked me to manage the house because they knew she wasn't capable of it. She said I was weaponizing their words. Over the next week, she acted like the world's quietest martyr. She slammed cabinets softly, sniffled loudly, and posted vague messages online about betrayal. Then she escalated. She called our aunt and uncle and told them I was kicking her out onto the street. They called me furious. When I explained the situation calmly, their tone changed fast. Apparently, Lena told them the house was supposed to be shared, not inherited entirely by me. I sent them a copy of the will. They apologized, but said I should still help her because she's family. I told Lena she had 30 days to either start paying rent or move out. I even offered her a discounted rate lower than actual market value. She screamed that I was heartless. She said it wasn't fair that I got a fully renovated home while she had nothing. I reminded her that she had money and opportunities, but chose not to use them wisely. Last week, she packed a bag dramatically and left to stay with a friend. She hasn't moved out fully, but she took enough things to make her absence noticeable. She's been posting quotes online about toxic siblings and cutting out negative energy. A cousin messaged me asking why I was ruining the last connection to our shared family home. I've been second-guessing myself nonstop. I don't want to be cruel. I don't want to abandon my sister. But I also feel like she's taking advantage of me and using guilt to manipulate me into being her safety net forever. I offered her time, space, and a fair rent option. She didn't want any of that. She wanted a free ride in full control. Now I'm sitting in the quiet house that I worked so hard to maintain, surrounded by some of her leftover boxes, and I keep wondering whether I handled this wrong. Was I too harsh? Should I have let her stay longer? Or did I finally draw a boundary she needed but didn't want? AITA? AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée turn my home into a trial run for a future motherhood, even though it derailed the one tradition my late mom left me. My brother, Liam, is getting married in the spring. His fiancée, Megan, is nice enough on the surface, but she has this habit of testing people, environments, and situations as if everything in life is a rehearsal for something bigger. She calls it preparing for the lifestyle we want, which sounds harmless until you're the one being drafted into her experiments. I, on the other hand, am not preparing for anything grand. I'm 33, single, and living in the house my mom left me when she passed. It's not huge, but it's comfortable, and it's where I keep the last real tradition she and I shared. Every December, I host a small winter dinner for close friends. It's the one time a year I go all out with actual cooking, decorations, and staying up late replaying Mom's old playlists. It keeps me grounded. It keeps her close. I've never skipped it. And for the past 7 years, most of the same people show up like clockwork. This year, the dinner was scheduled for a Saturday 2 weeks before Christmas. Invitations were sent a month early, and everyone had confirmed. Liam and Megan knew all about it, and they'd been invited, though they rarely attend because, in her words, my house traps dust differently and the flow of energy is not ideal. Whatever. The problem started when Megan got selected for some fancy fertility health study through her work benefits. She isn't pregnant, but they're planning to try in late 2025. As part of the program, she's supposed to track environmental variables: lighting, noise exposure, air quality, temperature fluctuations, and how potential living spaces support her maternal stress index. She told me all this like she was sharing extremely exciting news. Then she asked if she and Liam could stay in my house the week of my winter dinner to run what she called a domestic suitability assessment. She claimed my neighborhood was quieter at night, and my house layout was closer to optimal for early parenting. She wanted to test sleep cycles, morning routines, noise levels, and whether the kitchen was ergonomic enough for postpartum cooking patterns. I stared at her for a full 5 seconds before I said no. Not a gentle no. A firm, clear, we are not doing this no. My house is not a science lab, and my tradition is not a controllable variable. Megan acted surprised. She said she'd already scheduled the testing equipment through the study: small sensors for air quality and temperature, a nighttime audio recorder, and a wearable biometric tracker for her. Then she suggested that, since they'd already be there, maybe I could postpone my dinner 1 week so the house wouldn't be contaminated by unnecessary social stimulation. Contaminated. She used that word. Irrapatano. And I told her that not only would I not postpone, but I wasn't hosting their experiment either. She huffed and said I was being rigid and emotionally reactive, which, to be fair, I was at least halfway being. Liam stepped in later to smooth things over. Except his version of smoothing involved telling me that Megan had needs right now, and that I should be more flexible because supporting her health means supporting their future family. He said I should let them stay and just shift the dinner to their apartment for 1 year. Their apartment is tiny, barely fits 4 people, and is located directly above a bar that blasts 90s rock until midnight. It's the opposite of what the dinner is meant to be. I reminded him that this tradition is literally the last thing I have of Mom's. I didn't weaponize grief, I just stated the truth. He sighed and said I cling too hard to nostalgia, which stung in a way I'm sure he didn't intend, but still hurt like hell. I told him that whether or not he understood it, the dinner was happening at my house on the original night, and if they chose not to come, that was their decision. Apparently, that was the wrong thing to say. Megan told extended family, his not mine, that I was hostile toward her reproductive journey and sabotaging their responsible planning. Liam texted me saying I owed Megan an apology and that I should reconsider hosting them that week, even if I kept the dinner date. He claimed the sensors were discreet and that it wouldn't interfere. But the idea of air quality monitors tracking guests' movement or a sound recorder picking up people's conversations felt invasive and creepy. When I still refused, they said they'd simply stay at my place anyway, since Liam has a partial key. Mom gave him a copy years ago, back when he visited all the time. He said they'd only use it for the assessment window and would be very respectful. That was the final straw. I told him that if he walked in my house for anything other than the dinner, I'd change the locks immediately and he'd no longer have a key at all. That caused a full meltdown. He accused me of threatening him, of choosing tradition over family, and of not caring that Megan is trying to give all of us the first grandchild. I said her fertility study had nothing to do with me. He said it should. The dinner happened without them. It was lovely, emotional, and exactly what I needed. But the fallout afterward has been exhausting. His side of the family is split. Some think Megan is overstepping, others think I'm being selfish and hoarding the house. A cousin actually said I should be honored they consider my home a model environment. Megan still hasn't spoken to me directly, though she posted a long, vague message online about people who refuse to evolve supporting cycles of generational trauma. Liam told me he's disappointed that I won't join their future, whatever that means. I don't think I was wrong to protect the one thing that still connects me to Mom and to refuse to let my house be treated like a maternity training simulator. But maybe I was harsher than necessary. Maybe I overreacted about the key. Maybe grief makes things feel bigger than they are. Still, I can't shake the feeling that if I had given in this once, it would never have ended with just one study, one experiment, or one sacrifice. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée use my home for her fertility testing and for shutting the whole thing down, even though it caused a family rift. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her wedding gift request. I, 32M, have always been close to my sister, Emily, 29F. Growing up, we were pretty much inseparable. We had our fights like any siblings, but overall we were very supportive of each other. When Emily got engaged last year, I was genuinely happy for her. I had no doubts about attending the wedding, supporting her, or being part of her special day. However, things got complicated when she sent out the wedding invitations along with a rather unusual request. Emily and her fiancé, Greg, 31M, decided not to have a traditional gift registry. Instead, they asked each guest to contribute financially to their dream honeymoon. I initially thought this was fine. Honeymoon contributions aren't unheard of these days, and I understand that some couples prefer experiences over physical gifts. But what caught me off guard was the level of detail and expectation in their request. The invitation included a spreadsheet outlining suggested amounts per guest, divided by relationship category. Family members were expected to contribute significantly more than friends. My suggested contribution, as her brother, was $1,200. I'm not wealthy by any means. I make a decent salary as a school teacher, but I also have student loans, rent, and other expenses. $1,200 would be a substantial portion of my savings, and frankly, it's not something I could justify spending on a gift, no matter how much I love my sister. When I spoke to Emily about my concerns, hoping to explain my financial situation, she became defensive. She told me that this is our big day, and family should be supporting us fully, and that if I loved her, I wouldn't question the amount. She also compared my situation to my cousin Daniel, who she said had already pledged the full suggested amount, even though I know Daniel's financial situation is very different. I tried to compromise. I offered to pay $300, which is still a significant amount for me and more than I would typically spend on a wedding gift. I also offered to help in other ways, like assisting with wedding setup or helping with planning tasks. Emily dismissed these suggestions, saying that they needed money, not free labor, and that $300 was insulting given our close relationship. I was shocked and honestly hurt. I've never seen her react like this before. Things came to a head when she started subtly bringing this up to other family members and friends. During a family dinner, she mentioned that she was disappointed that I wasn't contributing the full amount and asked others if they thought $300 was appropriate. It felt like public shaming. My parents were caught in the middle. They understand my financial situation, but also want to support Emily. My dad suggested I could borrow the money if needed, which I found ridiculous. I did not want to go into debt for a wedding gift. After that dinner, I decided I couldn't attend the wedding. I explained to Emily in a text message that I loved her and was happy for her, but I couldn't contribute the amount she expected and didn't want to create tension on her special day. I also mentioned that I didn't want to attend and feel uncomfortable, knowing she might be disappointed or upset with me in front of everyone. She hasn't spoken to me since. My parents are upset with me too, saying that I'm being stubborn and putting a price on family relationships. My cousins are divided. Some think I'm right to stand my ground, while others think I'm overreacting. Since then, I've been second-guessing myself. Part of me feels like family should support each other, especially on important occasions like weddings. But another part of me feels like what Emily is asking is unreasonable, and her reaction has been hurtful and manipulative. I also feel that if she truly valued our relationship, she would understand my position instead of making me feel guilty or shaming me publicly. I've tried reaching out a few times to talk about it calmly, but she either ignores my messages or responds angrily. Greg hasn't reached out at all, and I'm not sure he even understands the situation. Some friends have told me I'm overreacting and should just pay the money to avoid family drama, but that doesn't feel right to me. Others have said Emily is being unreasonable and that I have every right to say no. I feel trapped between wanting to maintain a relationship with my sister and not wanting to compromise my financial stability or be treated unfairly. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because I won't give the amount she requested for her honeymoon? Or should I just swallow my pride and pay the full amount to keep the peace? Character count, 6, 320 if you want. I can also create a second version that's slightly more dramatic and personal, like the top posts on our /AMITHasshole, which tends to increase reader engagement. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house after he got banned from every hotel in our city. This is going to sound kind of wild, but I promise I'm not exaggerating. I, 28F, own a small townhouse in a mid-sized city. I've been living here for about 3 years, and it's really the first place I've had that I could fully call my own. I have roommates who are basically friends I met in college, and we have a pretty chill arrangement. We share rent and chores, and we generally respect each other's space. My sister, Emily, 32F, got engaged last year, and while I've been happy for her, the way she and her fiancé, Josh, 35M, have been handling wedding planning has been stressful, to say the least. Here's some context. Josh has a reputation that most people know about in our circle, but I didn't think it would ever come directly to me. He has a habit of arguing with hotel staff, getting kicked out of bars, and has been banned from several venues across the city for being disruptive. Emily will sometimes downplay it, saying he just gets passionate about things. But honestly, people have told me straight up that he has a temper problem. I had heard rumors about him from family friends, but never saw it firsthand. Until last week, Emily called me up, sounding panicked, saying that all the hotels she had booked for a bachelorette party had canceled at the last minute because Josh had been banned. Apparently, some of his behavior from previous weddings and events caught up to him, and now the city's hospitality industry refuses to let him book a room anywhere. Emily was desperate and begged me to let him stay at my place for a couple of nights. She said he was really sorry about everything and promised he wouldn't cause any trouble. I told her honestly that I was uncomfortable with it. I know my own space, and I know my roommates, and bringing someone who has a history of being disruptive into that environment felt like a huge risk. Emily didn't take no well. She started crying on the phone and saying things like, "You're being unreasonable. It's just for a few nights. You trust me, don't you? I would never let him hurt anything." I tried explaining that it's not about trust between us. It's about protecting my home and the people who live there. She said I was being selfish and that I should prioritize family over my own comfort. Josh apparently overheard some of this while on speakerphone and started yelling in the background about how he's being discriminated against and that I'm choosing strangers over family. I hung up because I could feel my blood pressure rising. After that, Emily went nuclear on social media. She posted vague things about people who refuse to help their own family and tagged me in a couple of stories. Friends and distant family members started messaging me, asking why I was turning my back on Emily. My parents called, asking me to try to compromise. But the compromise I kept coming back to was that I just didn't feel comfortable having Josh in my home. I suggested alternatives. Maybe he could stay at a friend's place, or they could rent a private Airbnb outside the city. But Emily kept insisting that it's not the same and that I was forcing them into a corner. The tension didn't stop there. Emily and Josh came over to my house unannounced a couple of days later. I wasn't home, but my roommates were. They said Josh was belligerent and started pacing around, opening drawers, asking if he could borrow a couch for the night. My roommates told him firmly that this was not okay, and he stormed out, yelling about me not being his sister. After that incident, I installed a security camera at the front door because I was genuinely concerned about what might happen if he tried to force his way in again. Emily keeps messaging me, alternating between pleading, guilt-tripping, and flat-out threatening to rethink our relationship if I don't let him stay. My parents are getting frustrated with me too. I've been trying to explain that it's about safety and boundaries, but it feels like nobody is listening. Even my friends are divided. Some think I'm right to protect my home, while others say I should suck it up for family. I'm exhausted and feel like I'm in the middle of a battle that shouldn't even be happening. I genuinely care about Emily, but I can't let her fiancé stay in my home when I know he has a pattern of being disruptive and potentially dangerous. I feel like saying no has turned me into the villain in my family's eyes, and I'm starting to question if I should just give in for the sake of peace. But at the same time, I can't shake the feeling that giving in would be a huge mistake. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house, even though he's been banned from all hotels in the city, and she says it's only for a couple of nights. I feel like I'm doing the responsible thing, but everyone around me is making me doubt myself. The story ends there, leaving the tension unresolved, which is a hallmark of popular AITA posts that drive engagement. If you want, I can write another one with an even more dramatic twist that hits exactly 7,000 characters and includes deeper family dynamics. It would read like a top-voted post on Reddit. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding after years of being expected to sacrifice for the family? I, 29F, come from a large, close-knit family that prides itself on loyalty and always being there for each other. For as long as I can remember, I've been the one who's expected to drop everything whenever family matters come up, no questions asked. This has ranged from helping pay for my siblings' extravagant trips, covering hotel rooms and travel for family events, babysitting nieces and nephews without complaint, and even putting my life on hold to help with crises, sometimes at the cost of my own health or finances. I'm not exaggerating when I say that over the past decade, I've been expected to handle more than my fair share of responsibility, while others were often excused from contributing. Recently, my cousin Emma, 27F, announced her wedding. I was happy for her at first, but quickly realized that the expectations were going to be, once again, entirely one-sided. For context, Emma's family has always been somewhat entitled. She's never had to work for anything significant in her life because her parents would pick up the slack, and when she got engaged, everyone in the family assumed I would be the one to handle most of the logistics and costs, even though she is my cousin and her wedding is ultimately her responsibility. When I asked for details about the wedding and what my role would be, my aunt casually told me that I would be in charge of decorations, organizing the bridal shower, and helping with travel arrangements for out-of-town guests. I asked what budget was allocated for my responsibilities, and she gave me a vague shrug, saying, "We're sure you'll make it work." I pointed out that I have a full-time job, a small apartment, and student loans to pay off, and while I would love to help in some way, I couldn't absorb potentially thousands of dollars in expenses or take weeks off work to plan her wedding. This is where things escalated. My aunt then said, "Well, if you can't make it work, maybe you shouldn't come. You've always been able to step up, and it would be a shame if you let the family down now." I was stunned. Every major life event for Emma was now my responsibility, and if I refused, I'd be considered the villain. I tried negotiating a smaller role, offering to help with minor tasks like putting together wedding favors or helping plan the timeline remotely. That was met with a sigh and an eye roll from my aunt, who said, "That's not really helpful. You know how much Emma counts on you." We all do. Feeling frustrated, I finally told my aunt and mother that I would not be attending the wedding if I was expected to handle major aspects of it, pay significant amounts of money, or essentially run the event on top of my full-time job. I offered again to attend as a guest and help in small, manageable ways. My mother reacted by calling me selfish, saying I had always been selfish and that I was letting the whole family down. She went on about how family loyalty is supposed to come first, and that I owe Emma for all the time she's been supportive in the past. My aunt chimed in later, telling me that if I didn't attend and take responsibility for what they were expecting, I would regret it forever, and that family doesn't forget. I stood my ground and didn't go. I know it sounds harsh, but the way I see it, I've spent years bending over backward for my family, often sacrificing my finances, mental health, and free time. It's not just about money. This pattern's been constant, and I finally felt like I needed to set a boundary. The final straw was the expectation that I could simultaneously manage a wedding for dozens of people while also holding down a full-time job and other personal responsibilities. That's not a small favor. That's being asked to run someone else's entire event. Since then, my family has been divided. Some of my cousins and friends have expressed support for me, saying that what I did was reasonable and that I've been overextended for years. Others, particularly Emma and my immediate family, have been extremely vocal in their criticism. Emma called me crying, saying I ruined her dream wedding and that I was the only one who could make it perfect. My aunt sent a group text to several family members, framing it as me being selfish and unwilling to help the family. My mom has barely spoken to me since, and keeps bringing up past times when I was supposedly helpful to guilt me into apologizing. I'm struggling because part of me feels like I might have overreacted, but the other part of me knows that I've been expected to handle situations like this for years. Every time I try to set a boundary, it's framed as betrayal or disloyalty. I understand wanting a beautiful wedding, and I would genuinely have helped if my contributions were reasonable and my time and finances respected. But being told that attending the wedding is contingent on taking on massive responsibilities I cannot handle feels manipulative. Some of my friends have said I should try to reconcile or at least send a gift, but I don't want to be rewarded for being exploited. I want to maintain relationships with my family, but I also don't want to fall back into a cycle where my personal life is sidelined every time someone else needs help. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding because of the unreasonable expectations placed on me, even though my family is framing me as the selfish one. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend move in temporarily and it causing a huge family rift. This is going to be long, but I feel like I need to lay out all the context to figure out if I'm really the asshole here. I, 28F, live in a 3-bedroom apartment with my boyfriend, Dan, 30M. We've been together for 6 years and have a fairly stable, predictable life. My sister, Emily, 25F, is single and has had a rough few years. She's been bouncing between roommates and apartments since finishing college, and recently she started dating someone new, Mike, 27M. 2 weeks ago, Emily called me in tears. She had gotten evicted from her latest place because her landlord said they were too loud, which honestly sounded like a flimsy excuse. She said Mike was moving in with her temporarily, but apparently Mike had to go out of town last minute for work, leaving Emily without anywhere to stay. She asked me if she could crash at my apartment until she figured things out. I told her I'd help her out, of course, and she could stay with me for a week or two at most. Things started off okay. Emily and I have always had a good relationship, but then she dropped the bomb. She wanted Mike to stay too. She said it would only be for a few days and that it was temporary, but she expected him to sleep in the living room since our guest room is technically taken by storage boxes right now. I was caught off guard. I told her I wasn't comfortable with having a stranger in my home, even if temporarily. Dan backed me up. We explained that we value our privacy and that adding someone else in the mix, even for a few days, would stress us out. Emily got upset, saying we were being cold and unreasonable because she was in a crisis. I tried reasoning that we were happy to host her, but we had boundaries, and I didn't feel it was fair to push them. Emily then started crying, saying that Mike had nowhere else to go either, and she basically begged us to reconsider. At this point, I felt trapped because I didn't want to hurt my sister, but I also didn't want to set a precedent of letting strangers, even family, into our home. I suggested she contact friends, extended family, or even a short-term Airbnb. She left crying and sent me a long text about how selfish I was being and how she had thought I would help family no matter what. A few days later, my parents called me. They were upset that I hadn't helped Emily in her time of need and said I was being overly rigid. They reminded me that family is supposed to support each other. I tried explaining my side, but they kept interrupting, saying that I was making Emily suffer unnecessarily. Emily has since been staying with a friend temporarily, but she is very clearly still upset with me. She won't speak to me much, and she's posted several subtle Instagram stories hinting that I don't care about family and would let her crash on the street rather than bend the rules. My parents are frustrated. My boyfriend is annoyed at how much drama this has caused, and I'm starting to wonder if I'm really in the wrong here. I feel like hosting a guest is one thing. Hosting a stranger, even temporarily, is a whole different level. I also feel like Emily is exaggerating the urgency because she knew we wouldn't let Mike stay. But at the same time, she is family, and she did sound desperate. I just don't see how having a temporary guest who isn't family is my responsibility, especially when it infringes on mine and Dan's privacy and comfort. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay in my apartment temporarily, even though she and my parents think I should have. Additional details that might be relevant. Our apartment is small, 3 rooms, 1 bathroom, and barely enough space for Dan and me. I have anxiety and stress about strangers in my personal space. Emily has a history of leaning on me for housing help multiple times over the years, though usually only for herself. Mike has never met us before this incident. I don't know if I'm being heartless or if my sister and parents are being unreasonable. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.